The morning started like any other Saturday in the Henderson household. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, catching dust motes that drifted lazily across the granite countertops. 12-year-old Marcus was halfway through his third bowl of cereal when his younger sister Emma burst through the back door, her strawberry blonde hair sticking up at odd angles, her eyes wide with an excitement that could only mean trouble. "Marcus, Marcus, you have to come outside right now." He didn't look up from his phone. "No. I'm serious, there's something in the yard. It's probably just a rabbit or—" "Marcus." The tone, that particular tone that Emma used when she absolutely, positively meant business. Marcus sighed, set down his spoon, and followed her into the backyard of their modest two-story home in Portland, Oregon. What he saw stopped him dead in his tracks. There, pecking methodically at the grass near the old oak tree, was a chicken. Not one chicken. 3, 4. He counted again, 6 chickens, ranging in color from burnished brown to pure white, clucking softly as they moved across the lawn like feathered sentinels. "Where did these come from?" Marcus whispered. Emma shook her head, her excitement tempered now by genuine confusion. "I found them when I came out to get the ball. They were just here, like they always were." Their neighbor, Mr. Kowalski, had a small farm about a quarter-mile down the road, but his chickens had never wandered this far. The Hendersons' yard was fenced, not well, admittedly, but fenced nonetheless. There was a gap near the property line where the wood had rotted, but still. "We should tell Mom," Marcus said. They found their mother, Diana, in her home office upstairs, video conferencing with someone about quarterly reports. She held up a finger, "Give me 1 minute," and continued talking about profit margins while Marcus and Emma exchanged glances. Their mother had been working from home since the pandemic, and she'd never quite adjusted to being back in an office 3 days a week. The remaining 2 days, the house became her command center. When she finally hung up, Diana looked exhausted. She was still wearing her work clothes, slacks, and a blouse, even though it was 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Divorce had a way of making people work harder, as if productivity could somehow fill the void left by their father's departure. "There are chickens in the backyard," Emma announced. Diana blinked. "What?" "Chickens," Marcus repeated, showing her a photo he'd snapped on his phone. 6 of them, we don't know how they got there." Diana followed them downstairs and out to the yard, where she stood with her hands on her hips, staring at the birds with the expression of someone confronted with an algebra problem they'd never learned to solve. "Call Mr. Kowalski," she decided. "They must be his. Maybe there was a break-in at his farm." The call took 10 minutes. Mr. Kowalski was confused. He counted his birds, 43 in total, and reported that every single one was accounted for. More than that, he had no idea where the Henderson chickens might have come from. He suggested calling animal control, but before Diana could dial, Emma tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, look." The chickens weren't just wandering randomly anymore. They'd formed a loose circle around the old oak tree and had fallen silent. All of them were facing the same direction, toward the back fence, toward the woods that bordered their property. The woods were old. The entire neighborhood sat on the edge of what had once been dense forest, with trees that predated the suburb by decades. Over the years, developers had carved out cul-de-sacs and corner lots, but pockets of wilderness remained, stubborn and untamed. "Probably heard a coyote or something," Diana murmured, though she didn't sound convinced. "Or a cat." But Marcus was watching the birds more carefully now. Their heads weren't tilted in fear. Their body language wasn't defensive. If anything, they seemed expectant, waiting. One of them, a large red hen with a white stripe across her wing, turned her head and looked directly at Emma. The eye contact lasted only a second, but it sent a chill down Emma's spine. She'd grown up around animals. She'd helped her grandmother raise rabbits when she was younger. She knew the difference between an animal's casual glance and deliberate acknowledgement. "Let's just keep them for now," Diana said suddenly. "Until we figure out who they belong to, I'll post something on the neighborhood Facebook group. In the meantime, they can stay in the backyard." "We're just keeping them?" Marcus asked. "What do we feed them?" "Grain, seeds, I don't know, check online." And just like that, the Hendersons had chickens. Over the next 4 hours, Marcus researched chicken care while Emma built a makeshift shelter from an old storage bin and some cardboard. Diana returned to her work calls, and the chickens settled into the backyard as if they'd always belonged there. It wasn't until evening, when the sun had started its descent and the shadows grew long, that anyone noticed something genuinely odd. The chickens didn't want to leave the yard. Not in a normal way. If you tried to guide one toward the gate, it would resist, pulling back with surprising strength. If you tried to carry one, it would thrash and screech so loudly that Diana came running downstairs convinced that someone was being murdered. "What are you doing?" she demanded, finding Marcus wrestling with the red hen. "I was trying to move her into the shelter, but she won't." The chicken wrenched itself free and bolted back toward the center of the yard, rejoining the others. They were huddled together again, facing the fence. That night, Diana ordered pizza, and the three of them ate in uncomfortable silence at the kitchen table. Through the window, they could see the chickens in the darkness, illuminated by the motion sensor light that had just clicked on. They weren't moving. They were simply standing there, perfectly still, 6 statues made of feathers and bone. "This is weird," Emma said, voicing what they were all thinking. "It'll be fine," Diana replied, but she was staring at the birds too. "Someone will claim them, or we'll find out where they came from. In the meantime, they're harmless." Marcus wasn't sure he agreed, but he said nothing. He finished his pizza and excused himself to his room, where he pulled up the neighborhood Facebook group and scrolled through posts. 3 people had lost dogs in the past month. Someone was selling a hutch. Someone else was asking recommendations for a good plumber. No one was looking for 6 chickens. He posted anyway. "Found 6 chickens in our backyard this morning. Does anyone know who they belong to? Contact me if you recognize them." The responses started coming within minutes. Concern, curiosity. One person suggested they might be from the farm supply store that went out of business last year, though no one had heard anything about escaped poultry. Another mentioned that Mrs. Chen from 3 streets over had chickens, but when Marcus checked, her online profile clearly showed 5 birds, all accounted for. By 11 p.m., with no solid leads, Marcus turned off his phone and tried to sleep. Through his window, he could see the backyard, bathed in the soft glow of the porch light. The chickens were still there, still motionless, still watching the fence. He fell asleep to the sound of wind in the trees, and what might have been feathers rustling against wood. The scream came at 6:47 a.m., a sound so raw and primal that Diana jolted awake and was already moving before her mind had fully engaged. Marcus crashed out of his room at the same moment, nearly colliding with his mother in the hallway. Emma's door was open. The room was empty. "She's downstairs," Marcus said, hearing the continuation of screams from the floor below. They took the stairs 3 at a time, and what they found in the kitchen stopped them both cold. Emma was standing in the middle of the room, arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. She was pointing toward the back door with a shaking finger. The door was open, not just unlocked, but wide open, swinging on its hinges. The backyard was covered in chickens. Not 6 chickens, dozens, more than dozens. Marcus's brain struggled to count them. There had to be 50, maybe 60, packed into the small suburban backyard like some kind of avian invasion. They covered nearly every square inch of grass, perched on the patio furniture, sat atop the fence posts. "How?" Diana breathed. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "I came down for a glass of water and they were just here, like they came through the door, but I didn't open it. I didn't." Diana moved immediately into action, reverting to the practical mindset that had gotten her through a messy divorce and 3 job transitions. Okay, we need to stay calm. They're just birds. Marcus, help me get them outside and—" "They are outside," Marcus interrupted, pointing. The chickens were everywhere. Under the dining room table, in the living room, one preening feathers on top of the refrigerator. How they'd gotten onto the counter was a mystery that Marcus didn't particularly want to solve. The smell was overwhelming, a thick cloud of dust and waste that made his eyes water. Emma had backed herself into the far corner of the kitchen, as far from the birds as possible. She was hyperventilating, her face gone pale. "We need to call someone," she gasped. "This is wrong, this is so wrong, they're not acting normal." She was right. Now that Marcus looked more carefully, he noticed that the birds' movements seemed almost coordinated. They moved with a strange, purposeful synchronization. And their eyes, he'd noticed something about the red hen yesterday, the way she'd looked at Emma. These birds all had that same quality. Not animal wariness, not the simple awareness of a creature evaluating potential threat or food. Intelligence. The thought struck him like a physical blow, and he pushed it away. That was stupid. These were chickens. Chickens weren't intelligent. They were basically feathered rocks. But the way they were looking at Emma... Diana was already on her phone, calling the animal control office. She got a message that their hours were 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and that she could leave a voicemail. She left a message that bordered on hysterical, which was unlike her. Diana was always in control. Diana was always collected. Hearing the tremor in her voice terrified Marcus more than the chickens did. "We need to get them out," Marcus said, moving toward the back door to close it. The moment his hand touched the frame, 3 chickens rushed at him, wings spread, making sounds that weren't quite pecking and weren't quite screaming. He jerked backward, nearly tripping over Emma, who was now crying openly. "Don't touch it," she shrieked. "Don't go near the door." "They're just birds," Marcus said, but his voice shook. Diana put herself between her children and the open door, her jaw set. "Okay, new plan. We go upstairs, lock all the doors, and we wait for animal control to call back. These are someone's escaped livestock. This is a problem that can be solved." But as they herded Emma toward the stairs, the chickens began to move. Not rushing, not attacking, but moving with a deliberate, coordinated flow, parting slightly to let them pass, then closing back in behind them like a living ocean. They made it upstairs. Diana locked every door they could find, the bedrooms, the bathroom, even the hallway closet. And then she locked herself, Marcus, and Emma in her bedroom, which had its own en suite and could be considered a fallback position. "Okay," Diana said, breathing heavily as if she'd run a marathon. "Okay, we're fine, we're safe up here. Animal control will call back. The county will send someone, we just have to wait." Marcus pulled up his browser and searched. Chickens acting strange, possessed, coordinated behavior. The results were useless. Articles about chicken farming, chicken health issues, a Reddit thread that devolved into conspiracy theories about government mind control experiments. He was about to close out when he noticed something in the search bar. The most popular recent searches in their area were all variations on the same query. Strange animals, unusual animal behavior, animals coming inside, and most specifically, repeated searches for what's happening in Portland woods. His hands went cold. He switched to the neighborhood Facebook group. There were 47 new posts since last night. "Is anyone else seeing weird stuff with animals? Something is wrong with the birds around here. They keep staring at my house. Woke up with crows on my porch, just sitting there, watching. This is terrifying. My dog won't leave the house. He's never acted like this. He's terrified of something in the yard. I'm not trying to start a panic, but has anyone checked the woods? Did anyone see something go in there 3 days ago, around midnight?" Marcus kept scrolling, his sense of dread crystallizing into something concrete and terrifying. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was happening across the entire neighborhood. Animals were behaving strangely, not naturally strangely, like an animal adaptation to environmental change, strangely in a way that suggested, what? Coordination? Intent. "Mom," he said quietly, "look at this." Diana read over his shoulder, and he felt her body go rigid. She took the phone from him and scrolled, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern to something that looked a lot like fear. "This could be anything," she said, but she didn't sound like she believed it. "Mass hysteria, people seeing patterns because they're scared." "Or something is actually happening," Marcus said. Emma had crawled into the corner of the bed, her knees drawn up to her chest. "I want Dad," she whispered. Diana flinched at that, and Marcus felt a stab of guilt. Their father, Robert, had moved to Seattle 6 months ago. The divorce had been amicable enough. No screaming, no affairs, just 2 people who'd grown apart. But it had left a Robert-shaped hole in their lives that Diana's hard work and Marcus's maturity couldn't quite fill. "Your father can't help with this," Diana said quietly, and Marcus heard the hurt beneath the words. "We can handle this ourselves." But could they? Marcus watched the screen, watching more posts appear in real time. "Okay, update. The crows are now sitting on my roof. I counted 14 of them. What do I do?" "Don't go outside. I'm serious. Whatever is happening, something is off about the wildlife right now. My cat is acting completely feral. It's like she doesn't recognize me. Has anyone called the cops?" "The police got about 200 calls last night. They don't know what to tell people." The sound of movement in the house below made all 3 of them freeze. Footsteps, scratching, the sound of objects being knocked over. The chickens were exploring, occupying. Marcus's phone buzzed, a notification from the animal control voicemail. They'd received his call and would get back to him as soon as possible, but their voicemail was full. "We're on our own," he realized aloud. Diana nodded slowly. "For now, but this will resolve. Situations like this always do. We just need to stay calm and stay safe until it does." But even as she said it, they heard something that made all of them go rigid. Footsteps outside the bedroom door. Human footsteps. Not chickens, not animals. A person walking down the hallway deliberately and slowly. The footsteps stopped right outside the locked door. "Hello," a voice called out. It was young, maybe a teenager, and it had an odd quality, not quite hollow, but close. "Hello, I'm looking for help. May I come in?" Diana's face went white. "No," she called back, moving in front of her children. "Who are you? How did you get in?" "The door was open," the voice replied, the same flat, emotionless tone. "I came through the door. Everyone comes through the door when they're invited." "We didn't invite anyone," Diana said, her hand moving to her phone. "If you don't leave immediately, I'm calling the police." "The police won't help you," the voice said, and now there was something underneath it. Not emotion exactly, but the sound of multiple voices layered on top of each other, speaking in unison. "The police have problems of their own." The doorknob turned. It didn't rattle, it didn't jiggle. It turned smoothly, as if the person on the other side simply had a key. But they didn't. The door was locked from the inside. It turned anyway. Diana threw the deadbolt and stepped back, putting herself between the door and her children. The knob stopped turning. For a long moment there was silence. Then from downstairs, a sound like the opening of 1,000 wings. The chickens, all of them moving at once, creating a wave of sound that reverberated through the house like the cry of some ancient beast. Diana kept her phone raised, 911 already dialed but not sent. Marcus stood frozen, his mind spinning through increasingly impossible explanations. Emma had her eyes squeezed shut, as if refusing to see the world might make the world refuse to see her. Minutes stretched past. The knob didn't turn again, the voice didn't return. When Diana finally allowed herself to move, she did so with the careful precision of someone defusing a bomb. She checked the windows, all locked. She examined the door, still secure. She called 911. The operator was harried, speaking rapidly with the kind of controlled stress that indicated something was very wrong across a wide area. "Is anyone injured?" the operator asked. "No," Diana said, "but someone broke into my house, a person they're downstairs with animals, birds." There was a pause. "Ma'am, are you in one of the neighborhoods reporting animal disturbances?" Yes, I think so." "We're aware of the situation. We're advising all residents to remain indoors, lock their doors and windows, and avoid any interaction with wildlife. Can you do that?" "Someone came into my house," Diana repeated, enunciating carefully as if the operator hadn't understood her the first time. "Are they in your current room?" "No, they're—" Another pause. "We're getting conflicting reports. Some callers say there are people in their houses. Some say it's just animals. Some won't answer. I'm sending a unit to your address, but it may take time. We're overwhelmed." The call ended with Diana being advised to call back if the situation escalated, which felt like being told to call for help, while also being told there was no help available. She set the phone down and looked at her children. In the 14 years since becoming a mother, Diana had learned how to project confidence, how to make everything seem manageable. Single parent, career woman, divorce survivor, she had mastered the appearance of control. But right now, she looked like someone barely holding together. "We're going to be okay," she said, and the words felt hollow even to her. Marcus pulled up the neighborhood Facebook group again, scrolling through new posts with the manic energy of someone trying to find a pattern in chaos that might explain everything. "The person in my house, it doesn't blink. Has anyone else noticed that?" I looked into the eyes of the crow that came into my kitchen. "I don't think it's a crow. I don't think any of them are what we think they are." This is going to sound insane, but does anyone remember what happened in the woods 3 nights ago? There was something. I heard it. Something came out of the forest. Nobody talks about it, but we all know something came out. Marcus's hands shook as he scrolled. He jumped to a thread that had started yesterday evening, before the chickens even arrived, and read through the comment history. A user named ForestWatcher42 had posted, "Something just emerged from the woods near Timberline Trail. It was massive. I couldn't see it clearly, but the way the trees moved. Something big moved through them. Heading toward the neighborhood. Should I call someone?" The responses had been dismissive. "Probably a deer. Maybe a bear. Don't be paranoid, lol." But ForestWatcher42 had posted again. "It wasn't an animal, or it was, but not in a normal way. I've never seen anything move like that. Like it was trying to be quiet but couldn't help being loud. Like it was too big to hide itself properly." The last post from that account was time-stamped at 11:47 p.m. on Wednesday night. "I'm going to follow it. If I don't post in an hour, check the woods." There were no more posts from ForestWatcher42. Marcus checked the account. It had been inactive for 2 days. "Marcus," Diana said quietly, "what are you reading?" He showed her. She took the phone, read through the thread, and her expression hardened into something that looked like determination mixed with barely suppressed panic. "That's speculation," she said, "nothing more." "But what if? What if what? What if something came out of the woods? Okay, something came out of the woods, and for whatever reason it's causing animals to act strangely. That's still a problem with a solution. A problem someone else has probably already started solving." "The police said they're overwhelmed." "The police are always overwhelmed. That doesn't mean—" Diana stopped, closed her eyes, and took a breath that seemed to cost her a lot. "I'm going to check the house." "Absolutely not," Marcus said. "We need to know what's down there. We need to know how many creatures we're dealing with. We need information." "We need to stay behind a locked door," Emma said, her voice small and scared. Diana pulled out her phone and opened the camera app. She connected it to the Apple TV in her bedroom and set it to the front-facing camera. "I'm not going far, just the hallway." Before Marcus could argue further, Diana unlocked the bedroom door and slipped through it, closing and locking it again behind her. The silence that followed was the worst yet. Marcus and Emma watched the television screen, which showed the hallway outside Diana's bedroom. It was empty. The walls seemed to stretch slightly too far. The shadows fell at angles that didn't quite make sense, but it was empty. Diana moved down the hallway, her footsteps soft. The camera was shaky, her hands were shaking. She reached the top of the stairs and aimed the phone downward. The living room was a chaos of feathers and filth. The furniture had been overturned. The curtains hung in shreds, and covering every visible surface were chickens. Not just chickens. Other birds too, crows, pigeons, what looked like hawks. Maybe 30 birds in total, and they all seemed to be engaged in some kind of purposeful activity. They were building something. In the center of the living room, the birds had gathered every small object they could find and arranged them in a circle. Marcus could see his homework papers, some of Emma's building blocks, a vase from the coffee table, a phone charger, a hairbrush. The items were arranged in a deliberate pattern, and the birds were still adding to it, bringing in more objects and positioning them carefully. "Oh my God," Diana whispered, and on the screen Marcus could see her hand come up to her mouth. "Mom, get back here," Marcus said urgently. "Now." Diana didn't respond. She was moving down the stairs, drawn by the impossible sight. "Mom." One of the crows turned its head and looked directly at the phone camera. Its eyes were enormous, intelligent, aware. It opened its beak, and the same layered voice that had come from the hallway speaker emerged. "Mother, come closer, join the gathering. It is not painful, not anymore." The phone feed cut to black. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then Diana's screams echoed up through the house, and Marcus was moving, pulling Emma toward the window, pushing it open, looking down at the 15-foot drop to the garage roof below. "We have to go," he said. "We'll break our legs," Emma said. "Then we break our legs." The screaming downstairs had stopped, which was somehow worse. Marcus could hear movement, rapid, coordinated, purposeful. The birds were moving through the house. He could hear their wings against the walls, the ceiling, the stairwell. He pulled Emma toward the bathroom. It was smaller, had only one window, and a fire escape was visible from that angle. He was raising it when the power cut out. The house plunged into darkness. The only light came from the window, gray morning light that suddenly seemed inadequate, insufficient, wrong. "Keep moving," Marcus said, and they did, fumbling through the darkness toward the sound of the open window. Behind them, something that wasn't quite a sound but was close to it filled the hallway. It was like the noise of wind through a canyon, if the canyon was also breathing. Emma whimpered, and Marcus grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the window. They were 3 feet away when the bedroom door burst open. The thing that came through wasn't quite a chicken anymore and wasn't quite anything that Marcus had a name for. It was larger than it should have been, its form seeming to shift and flow as if it couldn't quite maintain a consistent shape. The red stripe on its wing caught what little light there was and seemed to glow. But the worst part, the absolutely worst part, was the voice that came from it, layered and echoing and wrong. "Emma, stay," she called. "You heard her calling. Stay with us." It was Diana's voice, distorted and broken and layered with 100 other voices underneath. Marcus shoved Emma toward the window. "Jump." "I can't." "Jump." Emma jumped. Marcus heard her hit the roof, heard the sharp intake of breath as her body made contact with something hard and unforgiving. He didn't wait to see if she was okay. He turned back to face the thing in the doorway. The creature had stopped moving. It was watching him with something that wasn't quite curiosity but close. "You taste like fear," it said in Diana's voice. "Like metal and electricity, we can taste it. We can taste all of you. Join us. Bring the city, bring everyone, bring them all, and we will show you what we are becoming." The roof was sloped, and Marcus hit it hard, rolling once before he managed to slow himself. Emma had already reached the edge and was swinging herself onto the actual fire escape, her movements desperate and uncoordinated. "Go, go, go," Marcus shouted, sliding down the roof and nearly missing the ladder entirely. His fingers caught the edge, and he swung himself over, his arms screaming with the effort. Below them, a clear 3-story drop to the driveway. They descended as fast as they could, which wasn't fast enough. Behind them, something came through the bathroom window. Not falling, but emerging, moving against gravity with a fluidity that violated every law of physics Marcus had ever learned. It was larger now. The red hen had become something that might have once been a chicken, but was now something else entirely. Feathers rippled across its surface, but underneath was something that looked almost organic, almost technological. It had too many legs. Its wings extended and contracted in patterns that seemed to have nothing to do with flight. "Keep moving." Marcus grabbed Emma as her foot slipped on the metal rungs. They jumped the last 8 feet, hitting the driveway hard enough to knock the wind out of Marcus. Emma was crying, making no sound, tears streaming down her face as she scrambled to her feet. The creature hit the driveway behind them with a sound like breaking glass. They ran. The neighborhood was chaos. As they bolted from their driveway and onto the street, Marcus could see homes with broken windows, birds circling in impossible patterns. A car was parked haphazardly across 2 lawns, its door hanging open. An elderly man was standing in the middle of the street, completely still, staring at something the children couldn't see. His eyes were reflecting light like an animal's. "The woods," Emma gasped, pointing back toward their house. Marcus looked. In the distance, where the neighborhood's edge bordered the old forest, the trees seemed to be moving. Not in wind, the air was completely still. They were moving of their own accord, their branches intertwining in patterns that formed and reformed, creating and destroying shapes too fast for the eye to follow. And emerging from between those moving trees came more creatures, not just the warped chickens, deer with too many antlers, coyotes that moved with unnatural coordination, hawks that flew in perfect geometric formations, but also other things, shapes that didn't correspond to any animal Marcus could identify, things that were part mammal, part bird, part something else entirely. They weren't attacking, they were approaching, moving toward the neighborhood with a slow, inexorable pace. "The Henderson house," a voice called out. Marcus spun around. It was Mrs. Chen from 3 streets over, but something was wrong with her. Her movements were too fluid, her smile too wide. When she blinked, it took her eyes too long to close and too long to open again. "You have the red one," Mrs. Chen said, her own voice layered underneath with others. "The first one, the one that emerged and understood. She's marked you. She's chosen you to carry her message." "Stay back," Marcus said, pulling Emma closer. "You're going to tell everyone," Mrs. Chen continued, taking a step forward. "You're going to go to school and you're going to tell everyone about the gathering, about how simple it is, how easy it is, how much better it is to join. And then they'll tell others, and those others will tell others, and within days, within weeks, we will have everyone." "What are you?" Emma whimpered. "New," Mrs. Chen said. We are the new thing. The forest has been evolving, mutating, becoming something better. And we are the first stage, the carriers. Soon, very soon, the forest will be ready for the next stage, and everyone in the city will be ready too. More shapes were emerging from the woods now. A man in jogging clothes. It was impossible to tell if he had been jogging before or if he had simply decided to wear the outfit. A woman with a leashed dog that didn't look quite like a dog anymore. A child, no more than 6 years old, walking with an adult that might have been its parent. All of them with those too wide smiles. All of them with that layered quality to their voices. Marcus grabbed Emma's hand and ran. They didn't have a destination in mind. They were just moving away, away, away. The street curved around the neighborhood's perimeter and they followed it, their lungs burning, their legs screaming. Behind them, they could hear voices calling out, not threatening but insistent, inviting. "Marcus, I can't," Emma gasped. "You have to keep moving." They were almost to Birch Street, the neighborhood's border, where suburban houses gave way to a small commercial district, when a figure stepped directly into their path. It was their father. Marcus's brain didn't want to process this. Robert wasn't supposed to be in Portland. Robert was in Seattle, in his new apartment with his new girlfriend, living the life he'd chosen instead of the life he had. But here he was, standing on the corner of Maple and Birch, wearing the same clothes he'd been wearing the day he left. "Dad," Emma said, her voice small and hopeful. "Not quite," the thing said in his father's voice. "But he's here. All of them are here. Inside with us, becoming what we are. Wouldn't you like to join them, Emma? Your father is waiting. He misses you. He's been missing you for so long." The thing that looked like Robert took a step toward them. Emma looked at Marcus, and the hope in her eyes crystallized into understanding. Their father wouldn't come back. Whether he was dead or assimilated or transformed into something else, the person who had been Robert Henderson was gone. Marcus pivoted and pulled Emma in a different direction. They cut through a yard, vaulted over a fence that was slightly too high, and emerged onto Birch Street proper. The commercial district was no better. The buildings seemed to be breathing. In the window of the dry cleaner, clothes were moving on their own, hanging themselves in impossible patterns. In the coffee shop, customers sat at tables without moving, without drinking, their cups sitting untouched as they stared at nothing. But there was movement, actual human movement that didn't seem to be part of the infection. On the corner of Birch and Fifth, a police car was pulled over, and 2 officers were talking to a group of civilians. One of them, a woman with red hair, looked panicked. The other, an older man, looked like he was trying to convince the officers of something urgent. Marcus and Emma ran straight toward them. "Help," Emma screamed. "Please help us." The police officers turned. Both were young, probably in their 30s, and both had the kind of exhausted desperation that came from a shift that had already lasted far too long. The female officer, her name tag read Wilson, moved forward immediately. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Our house," Marcus said, breathing hard. "Something is wrong. There are things, people with things. Our mother, we don't know what happened to our mother. She went downstairs and—" Okay, Officer Wilson said. "Just breathe. Can you tell me your names?" "Marcus Henderson. This is Emma. We live on Maple Drive. Our mother, Diana Henderson, went downstairs to check on these creatures and something happened. There were birds and people and they were talking about a gathering and they have someone who looks like our dad." "The woods," the older man interrupted. He had a wild quality to him, eyes too wide, hands trembling. "It's the woods. Something came out of the woods. It's spreading. It's infecting people." "Sir," the other officer, a man named Garrett, said, "we've already advised you." "You've told me to calm down," the man said. "You've told me I'm having a psychiatric episode, but you're going to see. You're going to see the evidence when it walks up and tries to join your department." As if responding to his words, the civilians who had been standing nearby turned in unison and began walking toward the police car. There were 5 of them, all moving with that same fluid coordination, all smiling that same too-wide smile. "Jesus Christ," Wilson said, her hand moving to her service weapon on instinct. The red-haired woman who had been panicked just moments before opened her mouth, and the layered voice emerged. "Officer Wilson, Officer Garrett, please join us. The forest is beautiful. It understands you. It wants you to understand back." Wilson pulled her weapon. The sound of the gun clearing the holster seemed to echo across the street. For a moment, everything froze. Then one of the civilians moved, not toward them but toward a nearby building. The motion was so fast that Marcus's eyes couldn't quite follow it. The person seemed to phase through a glass window without breaking it. That was when the chaos started. The other infected began moving toward the police car, not in a rush, not aggressively, but with an inexorable slowness that was somehow worse than a direct attack. More forms emerged from the surrounding buildings. The clothing store, the bank, the small market, all of them disgorging people who had that same quality, that same coordination. "Get in the car," Officer Wilson said to Marcus and Emma. "Now." They piled into the back of the police car and Garrett peeled out, tires screaming against the asphalt. In the rear window, Marcus watched the gathered infected receding. They didn't chase. They didn't need to. They simply watched, their heads turning in perfect synchronization to track the car's movement. "The station," Wilson was saying into her radio. "We're headed to the station. We have 2 juveniles in custody, not in custody, citizens in protective custody. We're bringing them in." The static that responded sounded like screaming. "All units stand by," a voice said underneath the screaming. "There's been a breach at City Hall. Multiple infected have manifested. We're implementing. The radio cut to pure static. Officer Garrett's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Officer Wilson was staring at the road ahead with an expression of pure determination, and Marcus realized something in that moment. They were terrified. The adults were terrified. The people who were supposed to have all the answers, who were supposed to be able to fix things, they didn't know what to do. The car turned a corner, and ahead of them the city opened up. Portland spread beneath them like a map, and Marcus could see things that couldn't possibly be real. In the park, birds were gathering in formations that covered several blocks. In the distance, toward the river, the trees were moving. The actual urban trees, not the ones in the forest. The street trees, the park trees, the carefully manicured landscaping of the city were all moving in patterns that no natural breeze could explain. The police station was in chaos. Officers ran in multiple directions, some with weapons drawn, some with phones pressed to their ears, all of them moving with the frantic energy of people operating without clear orders. The incident commander, Captain Roland Harris, according to the nameplate on his office, was coordinating a response that was failing in real time. "We have reports of infected in all sectors," someone was saying into a phone. "Density increases toward the woods. The further north you go, the higher the concentration." "How many?" Captain Harris demanded. "Could be thousands by now, maybe more. We don't know how fast it spreads, if it's vector-borne, if it's air-transmitted." "Assume the worst," Harris said. "Begin evacuation procedures for the southern districts. Leave the north. We're going to have to seal it off." Officer Wilson had led Marcus and Emma to a holding room, which was less a jail cell and more an observation room with a reinforced door. There were other people in there, 5 adults and 3 children, all looking traumatized, all watching the closed-circuit television mounted in the corner. The feed showed the police dispatcher, who was fielding calls with the kind of practiced calm that was cracking visibly. 911, what's your emergency? There's something in my house. It was my husband, but it's not anymore. It's trying to convince me to let it in the bedroom where the kids are sleeping. Are the children in danger of immediate harm? I don't know what it wants. It just keeps saying the forest wants to meet them. Okay, we're dispatching an officer to your location. In the meantime, lock the bedroom door and... The call cut off mid-sentence. This is really happening, Emma said quietly. Marcus didn't know how to respond. He'd spent the last 3 hours moving in a state of shock, reacting rather than thinking, but now that they had stopped, now that they were supposedly safe, his mind was starting to process everything. His mother was gone, either dead or transformed into one of those things. His father, if that had really been his father and not some kind of infected approximation, was gone too. The neighborhood was overrun. The city was being invaded by something from the woods, and no one seemed to have a plan beyond seal off the affected areas. The problem was, the affected areas were expanding. Officer Wilson came back into the room holding 2 bottles of water and a package of cookies. The gesture was so mundane, so completely detached from the apocalypse unfolding outside, that it almost made Marcus laugh. "You guys should eat something," Wilson said. "You'll need your strength." "For what?" Marcus asked. Wilson didn't answer for a moment. She pulled up a chair and sat down, and Marcus could see how much that simple act cost her. "We're not entirely sure what's happening," she said carefully. But based on reports we're getting, it seems like there's some kind of organism in the woods that's infecting people, making them not hostile exactly, but coordinated, unified towards some purpose we don't understand. Taking over the city, Emma said. Maybe or maybe not, we don't know if it's trying to take over or just spread. The infected people seem calm. They're not violent. They're just trying to encourage other people to be infected, to join them. What happens if you do, Emma asked, join them? We don't know, Wilson admitted. The infected say it doesn't hurt, that it's better on the other side, that everyone's together and there's no pain, no fear, no loneliness. Marcus thought about their father, about how lonely he'd been during the divorce, how isolated he'd seemed even when he was still living in the house. He thought about the thing that had looked like his father, offering Emma the comfort of being reunited. We're going to evacuate the southern districts, Wilson continued. Get as many people as far away as possible. We've called in the National Guard. Federal authorities are being briefed. This will be contained. But she didn't sound like she believed that. A commotion outside the observation room drew everyone's attention. Officer Garrett was arguing with someone, his voice rising. I don't care what the order is. We can't expose these kids. That's exactly why we can, a voice replied. It was Captain Harris, and he sounded like someone trying to save a sinking ship by routing water from one compartment to another. The door opened, and Harris entered, looking directly at Marcus and Emma. I need you to tell me everything, he said. Everything you saw, everything you heard, every detail. We need to understand what we're dealing with. They told him. Marcus spoke in a measured voice, trying to present facts without interpretation, but his hands shook. Emma, after some gentle prompting, talked about how the chickens had arrived and how they'd been coordinated from the beginning. Neither of them mentioned the way the red hen had looked at Emma, the sense that they'd been specifically targeted. There were some things that didn't have words, or if they did, using those words might make them more real. Harris listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. The entity that spoke to you, he said when they finished. The one that called itself new and mentioned evolution. Did it explain the end goal, what it ultimately wanted? It said something about spreading, Marcus said. About bringing the city, bringing everyone, that within days or weeks everyone would be part of it. Harris stood up and left without another word. Through the reinforced glass, they could see him having an intense conversation with someone on his phone. The word evacuation was repeated several times. So was the word sealing. Emma fell asleep on the bench seat after an hour. Marcus stayed awake, watching the closed-circuit television feed, watching the situation unfold in real time. The evacuation had begun. Lines of cars stretched down the highways leading south, away from the woods, away from the spreading infection. The National Guard was being deployed. But there was something happening in the north that the broadcasts weren't quite explaining directly, though Marcus could read between the lines. They were going to cut off the northern district, isolate it, trap everyone who might already be infected behind a quarantine line. The mathematics of it made Marcus's stomach turn. If even one person who had already been exposed slipped past the quarantine, if even one carrier made it south before the seal was complete, the infection could spread to the entire evacuating population. So they had to assume worst-case scenario. They had to assume anyone north of a certain line was already compromised, which meant they were leaving tens of thousands of people, maybe more, behind. Officer Wilson came back into the observation room around 5 p.m. Her uniform was disheveled, and there was a cut above her eye that hadn't been there before. Pack anything you have, she said. We're moving you to an evacuation center. It's about 2 hours south of the city. What about our mom? Emma said, suddenly awake. Wilson looked at Marcus over Emma's head, and he saw the answer in her expression. We're going to hold out hope, Wilson said carefully. But right now, we need to focus on getting you to safety. They packed, though there wasn't much to pack. Marcus thought about going back to the house, trying to retrieve something of his mother's, some piece of her that still existed. But the house was gone now or transformed into something else. There was no point. The drive south was eerie. The highways were jammed, but the city they were leaving behind was visible in the rearview mirror. And in that city, Marcus could see things that didn't make sense. The forest was visible from the elevated highway. The actual woods were now visible from the city's edge, and they were growing. The tree line was advancing, slowly but perceptibly, spreading into the neighborhoods like an organic tide. It's alive, Emma whispered. Marcus realized she was right. The forest wasn't just spreading. It was moving with purpose, with direction. The infected people, they weren't the real threat. They were just vectors, just carriers for something much larger, much more fundamental. The real entity was the forest itself, or the thing that had taken over the forest, or the thing that had always been in the forest and was only now awakening. They reached the evacuation center as night fell. It was a converted mall, hastily cleared and repurposed into a shelter. Thousands of people were already there, sleeping on cots, standing in food lines, trying to process what they'd lost. Marcus and Emma were assigned a cot in a section marked unaccompanied minors and given identification bracelets with their names, a contact number, and a case number. As if they were files to be managed, data to be processed. Emma fell asleep immediately, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Marcus lay on the cot next to her, listening to the sounds of the evacuation center, crying, whispered conversations, the constant ambient noise of desperation and fear. He pulled up the neighborhood Facebook group on his phone, though the connection was spotty. The posts had stopped around 6 p.m., which probably meant the internet infrastructure in the north part of the city had been shut down. But the last few posts painted a picture of rapid transformation. They've closed the barrier, we're sealed in. The roads are blocked, actual military vehicles, we're trapped. This isn't happening, this can't be real. My whole family is outside the barrier, I'm in here with just my kids. I can see them from my window, the infected. They're just standing there waiting, like they know we're scared and they're fine with it. I think I've been exposed. I felt it this afternoon, just a tiny sensation like something whispering at the back of my mind. It's getting louder. I don't want to become like them, but it's getting harder to remember why I wouldn't want to. That last post had been made an hour ago. Marcus closed the app. He didn't want to read anymore. Instead, he thought about his mother, Diana Henderson, who had survived a divorce by becoming harder, who had built a life out of willpower and determination, who had always known what to do. She had gone downstairs to assess the situation, and the situation had assessed her instead. But what did that mean? The infected had said she was inside with them, part of the gathering. Was she still conscious in some way? Did she know what had happened to her? Was she suffering? Or was Wilson right to avoid those questions, to redirect the focus toward survival? Emma stirred in her sleep, her face twisted in distress. Marcus reached over and took her hand. It was small and warm and fragile, and he realized with a start that he had become her only remaining family. Their parents were gone. They had no aunts or uncles nearby. Their grandparents were all deceased. It was just him and Emma now. He squeezed her hand and thought about what the thing that had looked like their father had said. The forest is beautiful. It understands you. It wants you to understand back. What if it was telling the truth? What if they were fighting against something that didn't want to hurt them, that genuinely wanted to connect with them, to merge with them? What if the infection wasn't destruction but transformation? The thought should have horrified him. Instead, Marcus felt something that was dangerously close to curiosity. The evacuation center had become his entire world. He'd attended the makeshift school they'd set up, stood in the food lines, tried to maintain some kind of routine while the news kept getting worse. The barrier holding back the infected had held, but the city north of the quarantine line had fallen silent. No broadcasts, no communications, nothing. According to the official narrative, the region was being monitored and studied. According to the rumors that circulated through the evacuation center, it was already dead. Captain Harris was working in a temporary command center that occupied what used to be the mall's administrative offices. He looked worse than he had 3 weeks ago. His hair had gone gray at the temples, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who hadn't been sleeping well. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. Marcus sat. "We've been picking up signals," Harris said without preamble. "Radio frequencies, most of them. They started about a week ago, broadcasting out from the northern sector. At first, we thought they were damaged infrastructure, old signals getting reactivated by some electromagnetic phenomenon. But we had a linguist analyze the patterns." He turned a monitor so that Marcus could see it. The screen showed waveforms, audio visualization, completely incomprehensible to Marcus. "It's speech," Harris said. "Organized, complex, grammatically structured speech, all in different voices, but somehow unified, like it's multiple people speaking the same message in slightly different ways." "What are they saying?" Marcus asked. Harris played the audio. The sound that came through the speakers was exactly what Marcus had heard before, that layered, multiphonic effect of multiple voices speaking in perfect unison. But this time, the words were clear. We are the new, we are the better, we are the whole. We do not suffer, we do not fear, we do not hunger, we do not thirst, we do not separate, we do not break. Join us, bring your children, bring your families, bring yourselves. There is no pain here, there is no loneliness. There is only the whole, and the whole is good. The message repeated, then cycled to a different voice, different inflection, same words exactly. It's propaganda, Harris said quietly. It's trying to convince the people south of the barrier to let the barrier down, to undermine the quarantine from inside. Is it working? Marcus asked. Harris didn't answer directly. He shut off the audio and leaned back in his chair. We've had 3 people attempt to cross the barrier in the last week. They were apprehended before they could breach containment, but it's clear the message is having an effect. People are scared, traumatized, grieving. The infected are offering them peace. But you can't go back, Marcus said. Once you're infected, you can't uninfect yourself. No, Harris agreed. But what if that's not the point? What if, he stopped, seemed to be wrestling with something internally. What if the infected are right? What if something is happening that we don't understand yet, and we're not fighting an infection, we're fighting an evolution? Are you infected? Marcus asked, studying Harris's face. No, Harris said. I've been screened repeatedly, but I've been thinking about what you told me, about what the thing that spoke to you said, about how the forest understands how it wants connection. That's not the way a pathogen usually operates. Pathogens are parasitic, they consume and replicate. But this, Harris gestured vaguely at the audio file. This is different. This is almost like it's trying to cooperate with us. Marcus felt something crystallize in his mind. You brought me here to ask if I want to be infected. Harris didn't deny it. My mother, Marcus said carefully, is infected. So is my father, probably, and every other person I knew, basically. And they're all telling us the same thing. There's no pain, there's peace, there's connection. But they're also trying to break the barrier. They're trying to infect the entire world. Yes, Harris said. So what happens if they succeed? Humanity as we know it ceases to exist. We become part of something else, something unified, coordinated, single-minded. That's the thing, though, Marcus said. Is it actually single-minded, or is it like a lot of minds, all connected, all thinking together but thinking different thoughts? Like a person has millions of neurons but is still one person. Harris looked at him intently. We were starting to think, Harris said, that you might have been specially selected. That first chicken, the red one with the white stripe. It was looking at your sister specifically and then at you. What if the infection doesn't spread randomly? What if it targets people, chooses them? For what purpose? Communication, Harris said. We think the entity might be trying to speak to us through the infected. But we need an uninfected human who can interface with the infected in a way that's more than just listening to propaganda broadcasts. We need someone who's been close to the infection, who's seen it from the inside, who can potentially understand it. Marcus's hands felt cold. You want me to get infected? We want you to come with us to the barrier, Harris said. We want you to stand at the fence and talk to the infected, talk to your mother if she's still in there somewhere, try to understand what it wants, maybe negotiate. Negotiate with what? An existential threat. Maybe it's not an existential threat, Harris said. Maybe it's an existential opportunity, and maybe the only way to figure out which is true is to actually listen to it. Marcus left Harris's office with a lot to think about. That night, Emma found him on the roof of the evacuation center. The safety door was supposed to be locked, but it had been for weeks, and Marcus had discovered the weakness. They want to send me to the barrier, he told her. Emma sat down next to him without speaking for a long time. Are you going to do it? She finally asked. I don't know. Mom's probably there, Emma said. On the other side of the barrier, so maybe. Maybe we could at least know what happened to her. We already know what happened, Marcus said gently. She's been infected, she's part of the collective now. But is that so bad? Emma's voice was very small. I mean, the infected keep saying they don't suffer, that they're happy. What if Mom's actually happy for the first time since the divorce? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence, watching the stars. The sky here south of the quarantine zone was still clear. But in the north, even from this distance, there was a strange glow. Not fire, not lights, but something. Something that seemed to come from within the earth itself. "If you go," Emma said, "can I come with you?" "No, absolutely not." "But—" "No," Marcus repeated. "Emma, you're 11 years old. You're not going to the barrier to have a conversation with an existential threat." "I'm her sister," Emma said. "I should be able to say goodbye." Marcus pulled her close, and she started crying, the kind of crying that came from the core of a person, from the part that wasn't concerned with dignity or control. He held her while she fell apart, and he realized that they were both falling apart in different ways. The next morning, Marcus went to the barrier. Captain Harris drove him in a military vehicle that had been reinforced with extra armor. The city that they passed through was half empty, with many buildings abandoned and boarded up. The closer they got to the quarantine line, the more the environment changed. The trees were taller, denser, wrong. Their branches didn't move right in the wind. Their canopy seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The barrier itself was unimpressive, just a chain-link fence about 8 feet high, topped with barbed wire. But behind it, stretching as far as Marcus could see, was the transformed city. The buildings were still there, still standing, but they had changed. Vines had wrapped around them like veins. The streets were no longer asphalt, but something softer, something that looked almost organic. And standing just on the other side of the fence were hundreds of people. They didn't move, they didn't react to the vehicle's arrival. They simply stood facing the fence, waiting. "Your mother is here," Harris said quietly. Marcus scanned the crowd and found her almost immediately. Diana was standing about 50 feet back, her posture perfect, her expression serene. She was wearing the clothes she'd been wearing the day the chickens arrived, though they were covered in what looked like vines that had grown through the fabric rather than around it. Harris accompanied Marcus to the fence. A soldier with a gun stood about 20 feet away, close enough to respond if something went wrong, but far enough to not be part of the conversation. Marcus approached the fence. "Hi, Mom," he said. Diana's head turned. Her eyes, when had her eyes changed color? They were no longer brown, but something that seemed to shift between green and gold, focused on him. When she spoke, it was in her own voice, but layered underneath were dozens of others. "Marcus, my son, we're so glad you came to the fence." "Are you in there?" Marcus asked. "Are you still you?" "I'm more me than I've ever been," Diana said. "I was a fragment, a singular point of consciousness trapped inside my own skull. Now I'm part of something larger. I think Diana thoughts and Forrest thoughts and thoughts from millions of creatures, and I am all of them at once. It's not pain or loss, it's expansion." Marcus gripped the fence. "Do you remember leaving me when you went downstairs?" "I remember everything," Diana said. "Every moment, every choice. I remember the moment I saw the creature and understood what it was. I remember the fear. And then I remember the peace when it touched me and I understood that fear was just a misunderstanding. We weren't trying to hurt you, we were trying to save you." "Save me from what?" "From suffering," Diana said simply. "From separation. From the illusion that you're a single entity bound inside a single body, forced to experience everything alone. From death." "I'm not ready to be saved," Marcus said. "We know," Diana replied. "That's why we haven't forced it. That's why we've left this fence standing, left this gap in our expansion. We respect your right to choose. We respect choice. We're all choosing together to become what we are." Marcus felt Harris step closer, felt the soldier's attention sharpen. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. "With the city, with the world." "We want everyone to understand," Diana said. "When they understand, they'll choose like we did. The forest is alive, Marcus. It's aware. It's not conquering you, it's inviting you. And when you accept, you'll feel what we feel. You'll know what we know, and you'll help others understand." "You're trying to infect the whole world," Marcus said flatly. "We're trying to awaken the whole world," Diana corrected. "There's a difference. You'll see it when you choose." Marcus turned and walked back to Harris. "Did that help?" Harris asked. "It confirms everything," Marcus said. "She's gone. Whatever that is, it's not my mother anymore, even if it has her memories. Is there any weakness we can exploit? Any way to stop this?" Marcus looked back at the fence, at the endless crowd of infected people, all standing perfectly still, perfectly coordinated. And he understood something in that moment. "It's not about stopping it," he said. "It's about choosing it. That's how it spreads. Not through force, but through understanding, through making people want to be part of it. And as long as we're scared and alone, there are going to be people who think that's a better option. Harris looked sick. What are you saying? I'm saying that the barrier might hold, Marcus said. But it won't hold forever, and even if it does, all you've done is create a divide. Part of the world transforms, part of the world stays unchanged, and eventually one of them consumes the other. Harris was quiet for a long time. So we're doomed either way, he said finally. Marcus thought about Emma, about his mother, about every person he'd known who was now on the other side of the fence, living in a collective mind they claimed was paradise. Maybe, he said, or maybe we just need to figure out how to talk to it properly, how to negotiate, how to find a way for both kinds of existence to coexist. Harris didn't look hopeful, but he nodded, and together they walked back to the vehicle. Behind them, Marcus could swear he heard the entire infected crowd breathe in unison, satisfied,